Boating season is officially here and everybody's excited and ready to get out on the water, but there is one thing that's putting a little bit of a damper on all of our excitement about boating season, and that's going to be with things going on in the world today. Fuel prices are astronomical, meaning us as boaters, we really want to get out there and enjoy the water, but we're having to find some different ways to try and save some money down at the fuel pump, just like some of the things we're going to witness in this week's episode of Boneheaded Boaters of the Week. Now, as most of you already know, boating can definitely be expensive, and one factor that typically doesn't get calculated is going to be those fuel costs. I mean, let's be honest, very few of us got into the boating game worrying about miles per gallon because, let's be honest, we're in the wrong game if that's the case. Now, sure, you could go out there and get a sailboat, but oftentimes you'll forget those require fuel as well. With fuel costs this high, we're seeing boaters get out there in the water still, but being a little more creative about how they're doing it. So, for example, instead of going out there and getting on their 30-foot center console with twin 300s on the back, they're going ahead and paddling out on the canoe to go for that big game fishing. But of course, that one's not always going to work out in your favor either.
Hey, paddle the boat away. You hit the... Hey, paddle back. Oh my God.
Now, of course, not everybody's going to want to get out there and paddle, so they may just be trying to find some more fuel-efficient ways to go ahead and get that boat pushed, instead of getting out there with big horsepower engines trying to get it done. Now, another way you may do it is stacking more people on the boat. Instead of taking 2 skis, maybe you'll take 1 and put 3 people on board. Now, I already know what many of you out there in boating land are thinking. BG, let's just leave the motors behind. We'll go ahead and head out there and get a sailboat. Explore the seas with nothing but wind.
Allahu Akbar.
But what many people forget about this scenario is many sailboats that you'll get into out there actually still do require gas or have gas motors that you'll have to use when you're navigating them around marinas or in tight spaces. Obviously, it's a whole lot more difficult to try and sail into a slip than it is to try and motor into a slip. I don't know, for these guys it was difficult either way. Somehow I can already see how this one's going to go though. I just picture now the sailboat owner already yelling at the yacht owner, asking him what he was doing there. He knows sail over power. Now, another way you can find ways to save some money at the pump is trying to find a closer boat ramp. Being able to launch the boat without traveling as far obviously would save you some money, but you don't want to launch it too early. Now, of course, you can always resort to paddle as well, going out there and getting you a nice kayak, something that doesn't require any fuel. But of course, getting out there in a kayak does have its disadvantages, especially if you're heading out fishing or having to deal with wildlife in your local waterways. Another huge disadvantage to kayaks as well, though, is if you've got to travel great distances, it actually is quite a bit of work to get these things moving down a river for long periods, especially if you wind up having to fight wind and current while you're doing so. And speaking of fighting wind and current, nothing like somebody else costing you more at the pump. One of the blow boys gets out there with their sailboat, things go wrong, and the next thing you know, in your powerboat, you have to give him a hand to get him going again. Now, while I have spent a little bit of time out there riding on Hobie cats and sailing them, and I'm pretty sure we've flipped them in the past, but I don't ever recall having to use a powerboat to get it flipped back over. Is this the best method, or is there a better way of doing this? I won't lie, it's been years upon years since I was out there having to deal with a situation like this, but I feel like, what would you do if there was no powerboat there? I thought for some reason we did it manually and flipped it back over. I know that sounds tough, but I'm pretty sure we got the job done, even in the ocean in high wind. So you figure here on the lake they'd be able to do the same, but let me know in the comments. Now, as we already mentioned earlier though, most of us didn't get involved in boating to be worried about fuel costs. I mean, for the most part, we're out there knowing we're going to burn fuel, having a good time on the water. Or not having a good time on the water. Now, obviously, there's still going to be a discrepancy between some of us on how much money we're going to spend on fuel and others who really, truly don't care about that dollar on the fuel, as they're going to go out there and burn, well, more gallons in a minute than most of us will burn all day. Now, sometimes, of course, we'll wind up making some expensive mistakes on the water, and typically when you think about expensive mistakes on the water, you're thinking about breaking something or doing something costly to the vessel itself. But right now, with fuel prices this high, hitting a sandbar and having to dig yourself out like this can be a costly mistake as well. Now, while the fuel burn on this can be costly, I've got to point out some of the other obvious facts. The fuel is definitely not more costly than the leg injury you might sustain if this thing was to take off with you standing beside the boat. This really is a poor way to do it. I'm not sure what he was thinking. I'm hoping he still had the kill switch lanyard attached to him. That way, if the boat did try and take off, at least it would kill the motor, and then he would be okay. But I'm just guessing that was probably not the case. Now, if you can't find any ways to save money at the pump, then I guess that only leads us down one other path, is finding a way to make more money to be able to pay for that gas. Maybe starting a boating version of OnlyFans or something and trying to make some extra cash so you can give Cat that money he needs to keep that vessel going. Now, one way I definitely don't recommend trying to cut corners to find money for gas is going to be saving in maintenance and various other items on the boat. Whatever you're doing, always check everything on the vessel and make sure it's in tip-top working order before you go out. Not replacing a bilge pump so you got a few extra shekels to throw in the gas tank could lead to some more serious problems later. Or not updating those charts for a few $100s so you've got money to top off the tank could probably find you in a hard spot also. Another place you may find yourself running into a hard spot if you're trying to save money at the pump is deciding to go ahead and take that shortcut that, you think the water's low enough, you can clear the bridge, you can save a few miles and a few dollars, only to find out it winds up costing you more in the end.
You got it. No. No, Yep, I got this.
Now, one thing you definitely want to do, no matter what course or path you decide to take with these higher fuel prices, is you at least want to make sure you go ahead and budget and plan for it. The last thing you want to do is get down to the boat, get her launched, and start to back off the list, only to realize as you're pulling off, you look over and see that fuel price and decide, you know what? This isn't worth it for me for the day, and you quickly pull that knee-jerk reaction and decide to try and put it right back on the lift. Of course, if you do that too fast, that one won't always pan out for you as well. It may wind up costing you more money at the pump also, as the motors continue to burn while you try and get it back off the dock. But thanks for watching, crew. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Boneheaded Boaters of the Week. If you ever see anything crazy happening out on your waterways, be sure to hit us up on Facebook or Instagram and let us know when you might see your stories over here. Just like Aiden McDonald, Captain Tony, PB and Jer, Surfy Turfy, and Adam Coolidge did this week. And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and drop an anchor on the subscribe button here. If not, we're coming to steal your drain plug.